Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone, and good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the 10th talk in our mental health awareness series. In today's talk, we will be looking at something very interesting: active listening. Active listening is the opposite of passive listening. Active listening simply means that you are listening to someone completely without any interruption, without any lacking part in your conversation. So we are supposed to look at what active listening means, and then how we can look at its characteristics, and how we can practice active listening in our daily life. Okay, so let's get into the details. Now, active listening helps us to do two fundamental activities in regard to our listening part. Number one is to connect with other people very well. Number two is build our relationships very well. Connecting and building. So we first get to connect with other people, and then once we connected, we need to maintain relationships, connections to those people. It's more likely connection and then maintenance of our conversations with other people. Especially, this is the first kind of thing that we do with other people. But when somebody is not mentally engaging with other people, especially as to what they are saying, then what can happen is that they're gonna be like tune out, and then kind of they might be on autopilot. These kind of things can happen because the other person who might think that you are on autopilot, and you are not mentally engaging with what's happening. So basically, active listening, which means you are listening to the person completely, makes a big difference in our life. So it looks sound and feels obvious whenever you are into active listening. Okay, so let me get started with some of the Buddhist insights about listening. Now, looking at Theravada Buddhism, we can see a lot of teachings about speaking and then listening. Now, while not only talking about the listening part, let's also look at talking part. I would say speaker's part. Now, the Buddha has talked about the speech, especially with his Noble Eightfold Path. Now, in the Noble Eightfold Path, we find out there is a specific path factor, which is named as Samavacha. Samavacha means you are, speaking the right way of speech. It entails not lying, not talking behind the back, which means not slandering, not talking in a way hurting other people, their sensitivities, their sensibilities, and also not being a gossiper or an idle chatter. That means Samavacha, right speech, entails four aspects of our speech. So that if you are somebody who wants to be a good speaker, then you should have these four in your speech. On the other hand, we also find another Pali word, probably about somebody, the way somebody handles that person's speech. Mitabhani. Now, mitabhani. So, bhani means a speaker, but mitabhani means that speaking in moderation. Now, speaking less or speaking more, I mean, less speaking or more speaking. So, these two can take us to different extremes. So, we have to find out a good way to be in the middle in our speech. whenever we are talking, and when we are really looking at how our speech looks like, then definitely we have to cultivate what you call this mitabani idea. That means you need to be a mitabani. That means speaker, a moderate speaker. So if you are a moderate speaker, then you are a mitabani. So I wanted to point out those two aspects in regard to uh, a speaker, or I would say speaking. So you had to practice Samavacha, right speech, which has no lying, not talking behind the back, no slandering, no, I would say, speech about hurting other people in many ways, culture, language, and so on and so forth, and then not uh, being an idle chatter or a gossiper. What about the listening part, which is the most important, the peculiar part for today's discussion? Now we find couple aspects. I mean, this is my own observation. Number one is parato ghosa. Now parato ghosa, the Pali word called parato ghosa, comes in many appears in many suttas in regard to someone who wants to attain sotapanna. Now we all supposed to become sotapannas. That is how we can actually get rid of the four hells, narakati peta asura, right? So in order for us to get rid of the four hells, we should be able to attain sotapanna in this very life. That is the only way that we can stop this samsara to a certain extent. And then the Buddha gave us four things to do in order for us to attain Sotapanna. Parthogosa, Kalyana Mittata, uh, Parthogosa, Kalyana Mittata, Dhammana Dhamma Patipada, Yoniso Mansikara. Now, Parthogosa means we should be able to listen to someone who is talking the real Dhamma. Now, in none of the suttas we have uh, ever seen that we have to watch for somebody's talk like you are doing at this moment. So listening is more powerful than watching a Dhamma talk, probably because we are only paying attention to the sound. So Parato Ghosa is a part of listening. That means we are asked to listen more. When we practice the thing called listening more, that can help us, uh, develop Dhamma knowledge at the same time to, transcend Dhamma insight within us. Because this is not something that you are filling uh, with your knowledge part, right? Dhamma is to transcend. Dhamma is to help us transcend our insights. So we will be changing our perspective. Then we are putting them into action. So Parato Gosa is a part of listening. And then Sussusati, Nisame, these two Pali verbs, Sussusati, Nisameti. These two Pali verbs mean listening. In many talks, the Buddha said that we are supposed to listen well. I mean, the formal word is paratobus, but when we put that into a verb or maybe verbs, we can see sussusati and nisameti. That is another aspect that I wanted to pick out. The third aspect that I wanted to pick out for listening from the Buddhist perspective is very interesting. This is one of the panya, Suttamaya Panya. Now, in two suttas in the Diga Nikaya, Sangiti and Dasuttara, where we see that, Arhan Sariputta was actually trying to do a sort of convocation council within, the Sangha context. Probably what may have happened was that Nigantanatha died all of a sudden, and then his disciples were fighting each other. And then Arhan Sariputta thought that I would do a sort of counseling kind of a thing, like a Sangayana, in a way how Dhamma matters to Sangha in a numerical context. So what he did was he was trying to choose, Dhamma matters numerically. For example, I would say, uh, you know, uh, Dhamma matters that have only one portion. Dhamma matters which have two portions, Dhamma matters which have three portions. So this uh, teaching about Panya appears in that three components, I would say. Dhamma matters which have three components, kind of a context. Now in that we can see the Panya, wisdom in Buddhism, has been classified or broken into three parts. Wisdom in Buddhism has three parts: Sutameya Panya, Chintameya Panya, and Bhavanameya Panya. Sutameya Panya means wisdom you acquire through listening. And Chintame Panya means wisdom you acquire through rationalizing what you heard in the first Panya. And Bhavaname Panya is the third one, which means the wisdom you acquire through cultivating. So that means Panya, wisdom, can appear in three ways: listening, rationalization, or rationalizing, and then developing or cultivating the mind. So then, what do we have to do with wisdom through listening? Which means fundamentally, or in the first place, Panya appears to us in a form of listening. That's why we are trying to we are trying to listen to Dhamma talk, right? But what is lacking in many people's practice of listening is that they only listen, they don't rationalize. How many Dhamma talks you've been listening to so far? Probably thousands Dhamma talks every day. But how many of you have rationalized what the monks and nuns say? Rationalize with the contemporary context, modern context. Is it going to work for today's world? Now, what the monks are saying is only compatible. Is it only compatible with the time that we see in the Buddhist duration or with the Buddhist time? Why is it not compatible? Why is it not timely? Why do we not only take the essence of the Dhamma? Do you actually rationalize what you learn from the monks, nuns, or speakers, or lay speakers, whoever? Whenever you rationalize what you heard through Dhamma talk or Dhamma sharing, now that you will get a panya, like a wisdom through listening. But that panya has to be developed to the second level. That means wisdom, which is acquired through rationalizing what you heard. Is rationalization enough? No, you have to keep going. Especially you have to put the rationalized knowledge in wisdom into cultivated knowledge. I would say bhavana me panya. Now, this is something that I wanted to share at the beginning because we are actually looking at a Buddhist perspective into this topic. What are the things that are very concerned in Buddhism in regard to speaking and listening? When it comes to speaking, Buddhism is very much concerned about the length of the speech. Now, this is what I said as we talked about Mitabani, speaking in moderation. That means in Buddhism, we are always looking at how much we talk, because Buddhism is not concerned about, if you take another example, what food you eat, but Buddhism is concerned about how much you eat, moderation, right? Because people are different, right? So even when we look at our speaking practice, how we speak, we have to specifically look at how much do I talk? Do I talk a lot? So that's something very interesting. And then the second thing is the way you talk. Are you actually carrying an emotional tone? Right? We are not supposed to talk emotionally. I mean, probably we might be when we are with a lot of emotions, deep emotions, but the tone of your speech, right? You have to find a very calm tone as much as possible, right? So the tone, probably the way how you talk. Third aspect when it comes to a good speech is whether whether you respect other people when you talk, including you. Now, a lot of people, they simply talk. I mean, even they speak up, they don't know what they are, the kind of the impact that is on other people. So whether you respect other people with what you talk. The fourth one is patience. Whether your speech is something that entails patience, or you are somebody who wants to be very, uh, you know, rush in your speech, you take time. The patience is a best leader. If you don't keep us patient, and we don't know what we are talking, right? And the fifth aspect when it comes to speaking is whether you have the problem solving skills when you talk. Now, a lot of people, they only talk about the problem. They only look at the problem when they speak. But if you are somebody who speak whenever you speak, whether you look at if you can look at the solution part of the particular problem more than the problem, right? Solution part more than the problem. That entails that you have a different another skill attached to your speech. When some people talk about, they actually bring up all the problems in front of others, right? We may have problems when it comes to our life, spirituality, and all that, but we should be able to solve the problems. I mean, as much as we can when we speak. If we can't, then we try not to talk. Probably talk in moderation. And the final aspect when it comes to speech is friendliness. Whether you are a friendly person when you talk, because friendliness is very important. When you talk friendly, everybody likes you, right? If you show a sense of like unfriendliness when you talk, other people might be scared. So this is with regard to speech. What about the listening? What we can see in Buddhist perspective about listening. So we are asked to listen completely, fully, full listening. When you listen to somebody, when somebody talks, we are supposed to listen to that person, not try to bring our talking patterns, not try to talk about something that you want to talk about. Listening is a patience, a type of patience, right? Because that's why we need to understand patience comes in different forms. Even when you speak, even when you listen, you can practice patience. Patience can be attached to every virtue. And then not interrupting when you are supposed to listen. One of the fundamental things that you are asked to do is that not to interrupt the speaker, right? Because you will get a chance somewhere in the speech. That's the point. You can actually slowly, calmly start to talk, right? So not interrupting. So these are the very important aspects, I would say. uh, Listening fully, or I would say uh, complete listening, at the same time not interrupting and respecting when other people talk. Now, what is a good communication? Now, one of the things about good communication is active listening. Now, we have another two aspects of listening. We call them what we call comprehensive listening and empathetic listening. Now, we will be talking a little bit of them too. Now, comprehensive listening. Now, we talked about what is active listening. Active listening means that you are listening to somebody with your full attention. But when it comes to comprehensive listening, that entails whether you can interpret the words and idea of the speaker. That is comprehensive listening. I think that comes out, that follows the active listening. Empathetic listening simply means that you are very empathizing about the other person who is talking to you, right? Because sometimes some people just want to talk. Right? I mean, you don't need to add anything. You simply want to listen, right? That person will be very happy. So that's why listening is such powerful. So one of the very important aspects of good communication is active listening, as I said. Second is being genuine and empathy. So active listening, uh, genuineness, and empathy. So these three are very important when it comes to a good communication. So when it comes to passive listening, that means you are judging the person. Now, a clear distinction between active listening and passive listening is that in active listening, you are not judging the other person. You are simply listening. Actually, this is Buddhism, right? Now, what is mindfulness? You are non judgmentally uh, being present in the moment, being present in the moment, non judgmentally, right? So, even the mindfulness entails the non judgmental part, right? So, in the same way, when you listen to other people, try not to judge the other person. Just listen fully, right? Because the moment you start to judge the other person, you will practice the opposite of active listening, which we call by passive listening. What are the very important characteristics of active listening? Dhamma folks, if you have any questions, I would like you to ask those questions below in the comment section here. I can get into those questions during the talk. So, what are the main characteristics of active listening? Number one, being moderate and non-judgmental. So, how can we be moderate in our listening? I mean, that includes some elements about being non-judgmental. So, non-judgmentality is very important because I think we all judge oftentimes. I mean, if you don't practice it. But when somebody talks, whether you have a kind of a friendliness or unfriendliness, you try to minimize your judgments, right? So you practice active listening very well as the first thing. Second characteristic that we can understand whether you have active listening is patience. So being non-judgmental and moderate. Second is being patient. Okay, this is very important, right? When you run out of your patience, and you will make a big mess everywhere, even within your family or elsewhere. So that's why I always emphasize patience is the root of our all kusalas, all kusala activities, all punya activities. If you don't have good amount of patience, even when you want to do a good karma, do a punya activity, kusala activity, you will mess up because you might not be able to patient about what you do. Sometimes you are bringing food, you may be offering dana. You probably notice that monks might not having all what you bring, right? Sometimes you offer something to the temple, and you don't expect what you might expect something out of it. Sometimes you see something that is very unexpected, right? Probably going out of the temple, you are expecting even when you are doing things, right? So that can take you to a place where you lose your patience. That's why bring patience to every kusala activity, even for meditation. Some people are trying to be mindful at all times. You're supposed to be, but the moment that they find out that an object is going to hit them, kind of distract them, they feel very unhappy, they feel very impatient, right? So second characteristic of active listening is being patient. The third characteristic is that you should be able to show verbal and non-verbal communicative utterances to the, I would say, communicative things to the speaker. Now, for example, I would say, let's take non-verbal communication when it comes to how you show your willingness to listen. You are trying to, I would say, put away gadgets. You're not actually using gadgets and listen to the other person. You are fully listening. You're going to put away things on a side, and then you are listening. Oh, uh, let me hear what you have to say, what you got to tell me. At the same time, you make an eye contact. I mean, this is kind of bit culturally sensitive. In Asian cultures, we don't actually do this, but in the West, people like to maintain eye contact. which is a good thing because you are not trying to make an eye contact in a way that the speaker gets uncomfortable, but you are trying to make an eye contact in a way that you show that you are willing to listen to the speaker. And then the verbal communication. How can we use the verbal communication well to show our willingness to the speech that the other person is doing? You can use small utterances. Now, when somebody is talking, you can say, "I hear you. Yeah, go ahead." And I know. Okay. You can actually bridge the conversation from the speech to the listening, showing that you have the willingness to listen. But those folks who are not practicing even these willingness types, I would say non-verbal or verbal communication patterns, uh, they might seem like very blankly. They might sometimes have this stone face, which people don't like, right? So you have to engage both mentally and then physically. You can actually show that you are interested, you are willing to listen to the other person. That's the third one. And then the fourth one is you are, now this is what we just talked, questioning patiently. You need to sometimes question so that the speaker will understand that you are trying to learn something out of the conversation. And this is very interesting. I mean, probably at the end of somebody's speech, uh, some people, they look at only the negative side as a feedback. I would say that we all should look at the positive side, like a optimistic way of looking at what happened. I mean, especially this speech, and then we will look at the negative things. And if you are really asked to do so, especially in a conference and other things, I know there are people who always start with the negative comments, negative thing. That is pretty bad. Okay, but how do we know that there is apparently no active listening happening in a conversation? There are a couple things that we can learn, we can understand, we can actually know there is no active listening. If somebody is trying to be disrespectful towards the speaker, that is where we see the passive listening. Number two, if you are only looking at the verbal, the literal meaning of a conversation, of a speech, that is also passive listening. Number three is that if you are not maintaining a kind of a potential good way of eye contact. I mean, this is kind of this is subject to the cultural norms. But if you don't maintain the eye contact, that means you don't care the other person, practicing the passive listening, and then interrupting the speaker, or trying to hasten the speech, trying to hasten, rush the speaker, and then topping the stories. There are people who want to change the story or topping the story, or trying to bring up unnecessary aspects or sides of the conversation to the speaker. These are uh, characteristics where you can learn that there is no active listening, but there is passive listening. Disrespecting, only looking at the literal meaning, not making eye contact, and interrupting the speaker, and then I would say hastening the speaker, and topping the story or changing the story, and then focusing on something that is not interested or something that is not really important. Okay, so now let's look at what can we do to practice active listening. Okay, so number one is, as I repeatedly talk to you, it is to have an eye contact. So eye contact is very important. I mean, this is subject to cultural norms, but probably I would say this is something that you try to show the speaker that you are with the conversation. Now, if we take one example from the Buddha's life, you remember when many people who came to see the Buddha, especially when they want to uh, bring up something that is not positive towards the Buddha, he was very much listening to that person, keeping the eye contact, right? Without making any unnecessary feeling embarrassment to the speaker. Because if you look away, if you look aside without looking at the speaker, that might sort of, you know, uh, increase the pressure that is actually aimed at, directed at you. So that's why you need to uh, keep a, I would say, keep a moderate level of eye contact when you listen to somebody. That is active listening. Number two is when you want to ask a question from the speaker, try to ask the question in a way that you want to clarify what the speaker already told. Right now, there may be people who want to ask questions to put the speaker down. Right now, this can happen in many places. When you want to ask a question from the speaker, you should be focusing on something that you want to know in more details rather than trying to put the speaker in difficulty, right? That is active listening. If you are not doing that, or rather if you're doing something to know something that the speaker just told interestingly, that is active listening. If you have any question, try to practice a question pattern where you are trying to learn more about what the speaker shared with you rather than trying to put him or her down in a way that you don't know or somebody doesn't know. Number three, the third step to practice active listening is never ever disturb. Never ever interrupt or disturb when someone is talking. I think this should be a very fundamental habit that parents should teach their kids when someone is talking. I mean, because if you don't learn this when you were small, you will never learn when you become an adult. So even when you speak to somebody, especially in a scholarly context, maybe a professional context, maybe in a social context set up, we should be able to practice this virtue of not interrupting the speaker. Because not the more you don't the more you uh, not interrupt the other person, uh, the longer that person can express the views properly, right? So interruption, especially when somebody is talking, if you make interruptions, if you bring up interruptions, if you actually always interrupt the other person, that might not a characteristic of active listening. Now, even when you look at the life of the Buddha, if you can remember some of the stories where some people came and then started blaming or started praising about him, he never jump in the jump in the conversation in a way that he wants to interrupt the other person. He was patiently listening to what the other person is saying. That is a very good quality. I mean, this is why I always ask people to read the life of the Buddha before they wanted to learn the Dhamma. If you don't know how the Buddha practiced these fundamental qualities, you will never learn what he taught, because he taught something he practiced. So interrupting the speaker is not a good thing. I mean, you may be doing that because of your culture, but it's not a good thing because everybody is not agreeing. Most of us do not agree to such an interrupting person. Body language. This is something interesting as well. Now, body language means that you sort of show the speaker that you are willing to learn, you are willing to listen. You are not somebody who is ignoring that conversation. One of the things that we can practice is what you call by small utterances, that you are replying in a way that you want to learn. Probably you may show your small utterances in a way how the speaker feels okay, how the speaker feels very comfortable, like I know, yeah, go ahead, and all that. So that entails another motivation for the speaker to continue rather than jump in the middle of the conversation and then to change. Number 5. Now, this is about our inner talker. Now, we all have an inner talker. This inner talker or this chatterbox keeps working. Every time, whenever you see something, someone, or a phenomenon, this inner chatter is working. This inner chatter is functioning. So you feel that you want to talk something. Your inner chatter drives you to say what you think, what you feel about that particular thing. So you need to stop. You need to maintain this inner chatter, right? Now, in Buddhism, we always understand how do the words arise, or I would say, how does speech arise? Speech arises from vitakka and vichara, especially in the Abhidhamma, even in Sutta teachings as well. That means because of the vitakka initial application and sustained application, these are the two, I would say, fundamental mental contexts which bring up the speech. So, if we clearly look at what is with our inner chatter or inner talker, then we will be able to stop it. We will be able to maintain the levels of or different characteristics of our inner talker so that we are able to patiently listen to the speaker. That's the 5th one. Now, the 6th one, which I already discussed with you, is that we've been actually talking about how to practice active listening. Huh? This is the 6th step. Now, if you have a question, you should only ask the question to elicit or to make clear what the speaker taught, what the speaker told you, rather than questioning the speaker in a way to put him or her in difficulty, right? Because we should only ask questions to make clear what the speaker taught. That will help the speaker to talk more patiently, or probably that will also help the speaker to uh, talk very leisurely, at the same time talk naturally, right? Speak naturally. Number 7 is that do not try to change the topic, right? Because stopping the topic, the story is very, you know, uh, disturbing to many. So when you listen to someone, don't try to change the story, or I would say change the topic, because that might actually disturb what the speaker is trying to say. Number 8 is be open. There are a couple of things: be moderate, be non-judgmental. This is the kind of nature that we have to maintain at all times when we listen, even we talk. Be open-minded, be open-minded, be moderate. At the same time, be non-judgmental. Now, I think even a lot of people, they listen to Dhamma talks. These are the simple things that they miss out on, right? Now, who can listen to a talk, Dhamma talk, non-judgmental, right? Comparisons, manas can arise all the time. And who can listen to a Dhamma talk, or who can practice the Dhamma being very open-minded? Because in Buddhism, we have no country to protect. We have only the Dhamma. Dhamma is our island. Dhamma is our country, which means open-mindedness has all these sub things. I would say when you are open-minded, which means that you can see anything as it is. This is called vipassana, and that will take you to nibbana, panya. So be open-minded. At the same time, be non-judgmental. So when you do not judge, we may have to judge at certain times, but especially when you listen to someone, try to practice is non-judgmental way of listening, right? Number 9 is uh, now respect at the same time. Try to find a solution out of the speech. Now, when someone is talking about a particular topic, we are trying to look at how does speech help solve a problem. Even in psychology, we understand that we as humans mostly focus on the problem more than the solution. Actually, when you say that you are finding a solution, that entails that there is the problem too. But a lot of people, they spend more time on the problem rather than the solution. So that's why we need the solution kind of thinking. Even when you ask a question from the speaker, try to look at how much we can learn to solve a problem. So these are the 9 steps that I can share with you when it comes to, uh, I would say, active listening steps, how to practice active listening. One more time, try to make an eye contact. That's number 1. Number 2, if you have a question of what the speaker is saying, try to ask the question in a way that you want to make it clear. Number 3, never interrupt. Number 4, try to practice the body language in a way that you show your willingness to learn. Number 5 is stop your inner talker or inner chatter, because we have this inner chatter which propels us to uh, always bring that stuff out to other people. If we try to be friendly with our inner talker, inner chatter, we can keep him very low to a minimum so that we will be very open to what the speaker can share with us. And then number 5 is that, number 5 is the stopping the inner chatter. Number 6 is that if you have anything to learn, if you have anything to ask from the speaker, always do it in a way to learn something from the speaker, not to put him down, not to say that you haven't read this and that. You can have a good conversation after that in a friendly way. Why don't we look at this and that? But there are people who always look at the negative side of any conversation, any talk. That is pretty bad. That is passive listening. Number 7 is never ever change the topic when somebody is talking. Number 8 is be open minded, non judgmental, and be in moderation, especially when you speak. Number 9 is what I just explained to you. Try to focus more on the solution, especially when you listen to someone. Now, when you listen to someone, always look at how can this person solve a problem, especially regarding what that person is talking. Okay, so these are the steps that you can practice if you want to, you know, practically, maintain your active listening. I also want to talk about something very interesting, especially when it comes to active listening and passive listening in our daily life. Now, a lot of people, they might probably know these things more or less, but the problem is how they can, the difficulties that they are having, especially when it comes to separate out active part and the passive part. For this problem, I would recommend one very interesting method. I always actually bring up this in my many talks. This is what we call by RAIN methodology, RAIN, which is not my methodology, but I actually bring up this through the Insight Meditation Society in the US. So RAIN stands for 4 aspects of our emotion and what we have to do. R stands for recognizing our emotions. Now, whenever we have a bad time, especially when we are supposed to listen to someone, if you are not open-minded, if you are not non-judgmental, then the immediate thing that happens to you is that you are then struggling with bunch of emotions. You are disturbed by the emotions. So, in the first place, what you are supposed to do, because you really want to practice active listening, is to Recognize the emotion that you are having as a response to the speaker. Number two, A, R stands for recognizing, and A stands for accept. Now, the moment you recognize what it is, all about, especially when it comes to emotions, you have frustration, annoyances, irritations, uh, even happiness, joy, bliss. Second thing that you are supposed to do is to learn from A. A stands for accept. Then you're going to accept that this is happening. This is arising within me. Now I have to accept. I have bliss, especially the bad emotions. I have frustration. I have annoyance. I have anger. I have jealousy. I have avarice. Right. I have what you call disappointment, despair, all that sadness. You're gonna accept. A lot of people don't accept. That is why they are not listening to other person. Right. I stands for Rain. I stands for investigate, investigation. Now, what kind of an investigation is that? Investigation in this context means that you are once you recognize and accept, then the third step is that you are investigating the particular emotion that troubles you not being able to listen to the person. That means you have to investigate through physical aspects, mental aspects, and emotional aspects. Because you can see that you are puffy, you may be puffing, you may have heavy breaths, you may have different other change of voice, change of different things. You're gonna look at physical changes, emotional changes, and then mental changes. So that is what we call by investigation. I stands for investigation. Finally, this is very Buddhist. N. N stands for non-identification. Now, non-identification means that whenever something happens to us, a good thing, either a good thing or a bad thing, finally we have to be able to deconstruct the particular emotion, I would say, which has the phenomenon. All emotions have connections to phenomena, events. So we should be able to deconstruct us from the particular phenomena or those particular phenomena. Because if you look at the particular object of annoyance, object of jealousy, object of envy, object of avarice, object of sadness, to be the same, if you are not deconstructing, that means if you are constructing that sadness and I are not separated, disappointment and I, we are not separated, and frustration and I are not separated, that means you are constructing the negative emotions within you. But N stands for, in this context, means non-identified. That means you are not identifying the particular bad emotion with you. So you are very happy. So you have more opportunities to listen. You have more opportunities to be open-minded. You have more opportunities to be non-judgmental, especially with the speaker. That is why I wanted to, recap that if you can practice RAIN method, that can help you to be more into active listening, because active listening is very important. Because in our life, oftentimes we ignore, we neglect this particular aspect of our life. Sometimes there may have been many things that we may have lost because we haven't listened to other people, especially to our parents, especially to our elders, especially to spiritual people, especially to our teachers, right? There may have been a lot of people that we may have ignored, especially for a small amount of time, especially for a day, for an hour, right? For a week, for a month, for a couple of years. And if you look at the flip side, the dangers and you know consequences of that negligence, or I would say the ignorance of such good virtue called active listening towards those very important people in our life. You can see a big difference. You can see that if I had listened to these people non-judgmentally, open-mindedly, I could have been a better person, right? So that's why I'm suggesting you, even the time is not too late for you. Try to practice active listening even from today. You can give more time to listening. I know there are different people in this society. You might feel that you want to talk back, you want to hit back, but that might not help sometimes. That might not help in reality. Probably you might look at different ways. Probably if you show that you are patient, that bad speaker also will understand or listen from you. He or she might stop talking to that extent, right? So we can change everybody. I mean, in a better way. There may be people who might not want to be changed, but many people in this society, in this whole world, can be changed if you practice calm, peaceful, harmonious practices. So, active listening is one of the very important aspects of changing people. Even if you were a person who has not been an active listener, but if you start this, especially if you are a spouse, if you are a child in a family, the people who have not observed that from you might get changed uh, for the sake of goodness. So that's why I ask you, I encourage you to practice active listening and going beyond passive listening, where we see judgments, close mindedness, and so on and so forth. Any questions, Dhamma folks? Couple minutes. Please type in your questions here. You can take a look. Okay, somebody commented under the video, listening power depends on the capability of a person. Yeah. Uh, we think that we can change, we can actually help such people increase their capability, because we don't think that unless there is a genetic issue, probably we can change people's mind, especially if we can uh, influence them in a better way, they might get changed. Why not? Any more questions, some folks? Maybe I can ask a question for you guys. Which of these these steps that you think that you need to most work on, I would say, which of those do you need the most work on, especially when it comes to some of the abilities, some of the steps that you need to develop in your life, especially when it comes to active listening? You can type in them. I would like to see what you have to say. Okay, so if you have no more questions, so we can actually wrap this up by sharing transference of good karma, transferring good karmas with the departed people and the deities. May all the good karmas we've been acquiring in all these ways be transferred to all the departed relatives who passed away in the name of all of us. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. We are supposed to share good karmas with the deities and the nagas, devas and nagas. May all these devas and nagas be able to receive all these good karmas. May they be able to enjoy these merits, and then to increase their happiness at the end, May they be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana by blessing all of you for good health, quality of your life, and all the prosperity. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ettavataj ammehi sambatang punya sampadang Sabbe deva anumodantu, sabbe bhuta anumodantu, sabbe satta anumodantu, sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ca bhummattha devanaga mahittika. Punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkang tuloka sasanang. Chirang rakkang tudesanang chirang rakkang tumang paranti. Finally, let's make our great wish. May all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways be helpful for all of us to attain our greatest wish, the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this very life. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Before I conclude and before I wrap this up totally, I wanted to say that we have an interview tomorrow with Dr. Kiyoko Obuse from Montreal, Canada, uh, who is one of the co-editors at one of the projects at Oxford University. And we will be looking at the non-religiousness in the 21st century Japan. It's going to be live at 2:30 p.m. In Eastern Time in Canada. And it will be different from your time zone, but you can definitely watch it later too. Okay, so I'm going to bless you with a couple more stanzas. Please receive the blessings. Abhivadana silis nichang vadha pachayino chattaru dhamma vadhanti ayuvannu sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminate saminchatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Dhamma folks. Have a good night and have a good day ahead of you. Take care. Be safe. I'll see you tomorrow.